I'm there and back on my bike, there being Guardbridge. And well, this opens up with I'm on the Dawes, that's my touring bicycle, and I was already underway when I set the camera running, and that's heading down Largo Roads. That's the holiday store on the right hand side, and turning left here just in front of the hotel, and along this way now. Just about here, the wind really started to beef up. It was so strong. Coming down the hill from Morrisons roundabout didn't seem so bad, but along this stretch that's heading straight into the teeth of the gill, and my goodness, it was strong. I began to wonder if the idea of cycling out to Guardbridge might be maybe not such a good one after all. But I stuck with it, and all the time hoping that perhaps it might fall away a bit, or maybe even swing around, not to be just in my face quite so much as it was. But this is a nice smooth piece of road along here, and there's one or two bumps that the council have put up here and there, just checking to see if something's coming up behind. When the video flicks to the side like that, it looks as though I'm just having a very quick, well, a few degrees of my gaze to the side, but with the way that your eyes can swing around to the side much more than your head does, and I was able to check behind to see if anything was coming. A quick glance is all that takes. Now, coming up to the end of the road, and that is the Cannon Gate just coming up. A quick check in both directions, and off to the right. Now at this point the wind suddenly it's in my back, so the noise in the microphone that was so loud all the way along that last road there, it suddenly goes away. I'm cycling down here past the primary school on the left hand side. If you look, there's some yellow lining on the road here, and my goodness, that must be quite high, because the vibration, you can see the camera jerking about. The vibration caused by that was really something. In fact, there's two or three places on this route today where I was really quite appalled at the surface of the road. In places, it doesn't look like it's bad, but it's actually full of little potholes, tiny little potholes, that give the effect of running over minor corrugations. Sometimes it's strong enough to feel that the fillings would be shaken from your teeth. Now, carry on down here, past the Botanic Gardens. There's another couple of speed pillows here. Now, I'm going to be slowing down at the bottom of the hill. There's some braking noise on the original recording here, and I'm going to be hopping up onto the pavement, or crossing the pavement here, and taking the cycle path that heads up this steep little slope here with a sharp left-hander at the top. And this brings me up to, I wonder how many newly arrived people in the town know that this is actually the old railway. Yeah, and this is the old rail bed, or the course of the old rail bed anyway. It may have veered slightly, I suppose, but I rather think this is exactly where the railway used to be, because in up to 1963 St Andrews had its own railway station, and on or about that year it had been completely refurbished. It looked lovely, it was repainted, everything was done top to toe, and it looked as fresh as a new pin. And then along came Dr. Beeching's report, and our station, along with so many others, was axed, and that was it. No more trains for St Andrews. And after a while, the station was demolished. The rail bed was lifted up, and the old railway was carried. It wasn't built over or anything, but it was made into this pathway. I don't know how many years after that it took place, because at that point I wasn't living in St Andrews. But anyway, this is in effect the old railway, and I'm about to go across the old viaduct. There we are. That looks like a bridge. It's actually a viaduct that used to carry the railway over the access going down underneath there to the university gardening facilities. Very short, steep slope uphill here. There we go. Dropping gears all the way to the very bottom to wind my way to the top. Just about made that. The camera is bleached out a bit because it was in the dark, and now it's back into the sunshine. You can see my profile there, the camera on top of my helmet. and again. Now this is not a street, it's car parking here, and there's the Rifle Club on the right hand side. This lady's just moving into her place. Here we are. Now there's somebody coming along with it looks like a waste wagon of some kind blocking the entrance to the car park. Now I'm going to actually nip around the front of him, and it's absolutely safe. It doesn't look particularly safe to do this, but in fact it was. He reverses a bit, and then I can look to the left, see this car's coming, and he is going to plug the gap beside the rubbish wagon so I can safely carry on through to the other half of the car park. This is the north side of the car park. This is a very necessary car park these days when there's parking fees all over the town. In fact, I think they pay a fee in this car park now, come to think of it. Can you tell I don't use this park very much? And then along to the other end, that takes us to Double Dykes Road. Come on Ian, hurry up. Just about there now. Yeah, that's Double Dykes Road. Just about to cross that. The tennis club is just off to the left there, just beyond that wall. And this is still on the old railway, only it had to be lifted up for the purpose of making this into a road, and this would actually have been right exactly now where the railway station used to be for St Andrews. There we are. Still on the old railway. I'm not sure where the railway followed from the north side of the station. It would be something like a straight line, but the road actually veers a bit left here to what I think is the science buildings for St Andrews University. There's a couple of these bumps there, whoops, up and down again. Now this is part of the road surface that really is so rough. It doesn't look it, but it is. It's very, very rough. Not so much the car tyres, but a thin bicycle wheel. My goodness, it really was quite rough. Anyhow, there's the second of the bumps. Only a few yards to go, and we'll soon be at the roundabout that's called, we call it Petheram Bridge roundabout. Petheram Bridge was the railway bridge. The stanchions on either side of the road are still visible. I don't know if it's going to be visible on this tape. I think perhaps not. If it is, I'll point them out. But this joins up with the main access to St Andrews for really the rest of the country, because the road that takes you from St Andrews out through Guardbridge and to All Point West, from there, that is the road that leaves this roundabout on the left hand side. That's where I am now. But I'm not going that way. I'm going to cross over, go all the way through the roundabout to here. Now this used to be the station, the old station access rather, where there was a goods yard roundabout here, and the famous Old Course Hotel is that rather custardy yellow building just showing up on the right hand side along here. The wind's in my face again at this stretch, and it's about here I'm beginning to realise that I am going to have the wind in my face all the way to Guardbridge. I was hoping that the trees on the cycle path I'd be using might take some of the wind off me, and in fact that did work out quite well. But even so, it was a really stiff ride, and I've not been back on bicycles all that very long after quite a long layoff. So this is really the first rather testing ride that I've had. I've done one other, but that's a matter for another day. Now I'm going to be crossing the road just about here to use the footpath as a cycle path in effect. There's a nice smooth pathway here, and hardly ever anyone using this as a pedestrian way, except for when they've parked their cars. As you can see, there's a lot of cars parked there. The cycle path access is at the far end of this road here. There are a couple of entrances on the right which give access to golfing facilities. There's a man doing something with an odd looking tool. Just take it nice and easy there. Now that's an access that gets opened up, I think, when the Open Championship's on. There's another one of those further on here on the cycle path itself, which you'll see as we progress. Actually, I'll just say that initially when I put this video up on YouTube, I'd rather foolishly chosen a number of recorded songs I had in my own collection of MP3 files. Ones to do with vehicles, being on the road, that sort of thing. And YouTube barred the video because of the copyrighted content on it. I suppose quite rightly so, but it was a bit annoying at the time. So I decided what I would maybe have a go at is to try to make a voiceover, which is what is being heard at the moment. So I'm playing the video on my screen and just making this up as I go, could you tell? Now the woods ahead there are, there's an estate in there. Now what's it called again? You know, it's left me. And that road on the right goes down to the practice range. That's a dedicated driving range for golfers. St Andrews is very heavily dependent on people coming here to play golf. Not just that, people coming to take their degrees in the university, but golf, tourism and education, I suppose, are St Andrews' three main sources of revenue. And that's the track now that I've come all the way down through the town to access. And there we are, that's the cycle path now. Rather odd looking building coming up here on the right hand side. Now look at that. Now that roof there, it's a big curved concrete roof, and it's been planted, I think it was initially planted in grass, but it seems to be planted in something that's got yellow flowers of some description. I'm not a botanist enough to know what it is, but it's a most unusual way to make a cladding on top of a roof. Now here we are, the wind is largely shielded from me, or I'm shielded from the wind I should say, by all the stand of trees on the left hand side. Now the last time I used this cycle track was really quite some time ago, and at that time I don't think these trees were nearly half so high as they are now, so that'll give you some idea of how long it is since I used this cycle pathway. I gather this was a joint effort actually between the Links Trust and possibly Fife Council. Not too sure about the exact nature of that, but the idea was that the two purposes for this would be, well, obviously for a cycle track for folk like myself, but also to be an access road, because the Links Trust, being in charge of all the golf courses in St Andrews, it has to maintain the golf courses, and that means they need a supply of turf. So when an area of the grass gets damaged, they cut that out and put in a piece of turf, and it has to match the surrounding grass, so they need their grass turf to be uniform stuff. So what they do is they grow turf, or they grow turf in one or two fields further out this way. And that's the Eden estuary is on the right hand side here. At the moment the camera is bleaching that out because it can't cope with the bright sunshine as well as the deep shadow. It has to expose for one or the other, and because the shadow is mostly occupying the frame, the sunshine areas are getting rather bleached out. But yes, the Eden estuary is over there on the right hand side with about a good field's width, maybe a bit more than that, but call it a big field's width between this track and a banking that they've raised up to try to keep particularly high floods from flooding, high tides rather, from flooding over onto the golfing links. Because any time that happens, of course, the salt water would kill the grass, and that would mean that that area of the golf course would be ruined for quite some time till they could get the grass repaired again. Now, I was saying about the reason for the track being here. To transport the cut turf from the growing field back to where it's needed on the golfing links, the tractors pulling trailers of turf were blocking this road quite badly at times. And so I think that's why the Links Trust decided to provide this track I presume with some funding from Fife Council as well, because cycle tracks were becoming politically, well, quite positive, I suppose, in a way. Cycling had an environmental, positive image. Some hiccups there, trying not to let them be heard on this recording. And that's the history of this. Here and there, the trees on the side there, they've sent their roots out underneath the tarmac, and they're just there and there again. There are some very nasty ripples on the surface, and if they catch you out, you try cycling too fast perhaps, there you are, another one or two there. They really are significant. I wish that they would get those repaired. That was still like that the last time I was out here too. Anyway, there we are. Now, this is coming to, maybe not quite there yet, but we're getting towards the limit of the trees. And from that point on to Guardbridge, the full force of the wind will be right in my face. And if you watch at the speed I'm holding there, which isn't too bad, not too slow, I think you'll notice that speed begins to drop off a bit because of the wind. And also there's a bit of a gradient comes into force along this way a bit, maybe not quite yet. There's another couple of bumps in the road. Yeah, it's just taking up along here. The hedge on the right hand side masks the golf links, which eventually becomes just fields. Not for a bit yet, but there you can see just through that bit of fencing there. Now carrying on, you can see the traffic on the right hand side. The road is about maybe 15, 18, maybe 20 yards away, and places it's closer, and so the vehicles, the traffic noise is much louder. But along this stretch, it's not just so bad. The biggest noise I had to contend with that day was the sound of the wind blasting past me, because wearing a helmet with the camera on top as well made quite a bit of wind noise. They're coming out from the trees now. There we are, and there's really just this sparse hawthorn hedge on the left hand side keeping the wind from me. This is a long stretch, this. A very long stretch. Oh, I don't know, is it a mile? It's quite featureless, and I think that's a field of barley. Yes, that's a field of young barley on the right hand side of the road there. There's cow parsley growing along the path, and that's mostly clumps of hawthorn, maybe some blackthorn amongst it. And indeed you can see the road there is much closer to the cycle track than it was further back. In the distance there's the hill at Balmullo, where the quarry for the Redstone chips is. Is there anything else of note? I don't really think so. It is rather featureless here. I wonder if there's a way to carry on so that this doesn't have to be just quite so tedious as this, because this is pretty boring. It's even boring from me, and I'm making the recording. So what chance do the poor watchers have? Yes. Anyhow, I don't think there's much of a way to try to shorten this, so I think I'll maybe see if there's some way of actually cutting the video. Now there's the access I mentioned earlier back there, which allows vehicles to get into the fields on the right hand side from the road. Now is this I thought it was a cyclist there. I do encounter a cyclist somewhere along this track. I can't remember exactly where it came from now at the moment. Sometimes because my neck's quite sore with having the weight of the helmet on, which is actually a featherweight thing, you'd hardly wonder why that would make your neck sore. But here and there, that's the case, and I have to remind myself to keep my head lifted up, or else the camera would be looking at the tarmac just in front of the bicycle's front wheel. Now here and there, things seem to fade just a wee bit. They're just there. I wonder what's causing that. This is being shot at 1080 dots per inch, I think that is, and with a frame rate of 60. There's another vehicle access point. And yeah, that's the last field on the right, and you can just see at in the distance there where the track and the road both curve to the right hand side, and at that point the teeth of the wind begin to get a wee bit blunted by that small direction change, so it's not just quite as directly in my face as it's been for this last rather lengthy session, with apologies for the tedious nature of this part of the video. As I get better at this, maybe I'll be able to fillet out the bits and pieces that are much less interesting. I think if I did that with this, I'd end up with about 10 minutes of tape that anyone might want to watch, or might feel duty bound to watch, might be perhaps the better way to put that. It's a lovely day. The temperature, I think, was about 23, 24, something like that, which for this part of Scotland doesn't happen all that very often. So it was very welcome to have such a warm wind, although it was a strong wind. It was a warm wind. So something I forgot to do was to take a bottle of water with me that day, and I was beginning to wish that that omission hadn't been made. And it's along this stretch, I think, that I began to feel thirsty. I also reflected at that point that well, it was in the house, so despite the fact that there was a hotel at the other end of this track, I lacked the means to go in and buy myself a pint of lager, because otherwise I almost certainly would have done exactly that. Anyhow, for the next time perhaps, we shall see. I will be doing this off and on, but I won't be cursing the one or two who might want to watch this on the odd occasion with too many of these dreadfully tedious cycling videos. You see, just back there was a bit of a smudge on the screen. I wonder why that happens. Though I'm quite an experienced still photographer, video photography, or videography I suppose is a bit of a new one for me. The camera I bought first of all was an impulse buy in Morrisons, and that proved to be really a bit of a pig in a poke. It was very cheap, really pretty nasty. And although it did record video, it recorded the most terrible racket of noise. It sounded like a machine gun in the distance. And there's one or two other videos I've put on YouTube, which were a bit discouraging, to be honest, because I couldn't get any decent audio on them. So I overlaid one with a Simon and Garfunkel track, and although there was a note came up on the video in the video manager about that, saying that it was copyright material, in this case the copyright holder had decided to let it go, and just to let it go. And that encouraged me to put some more music tracks on this one, but they didn't let this one go. So there you are. You're having to listen to me instead of some quite well chosen tracks, actually. I thought I was quite pleased with myself when I put the soundtrack together. But there's an oddment to do with this video, and I still don't really understand what's happened, because when I assembled this in Microsoft Live Movie Maker, the minute count was, what was it? Was it 27? Was it? I think it was about 27 minutes. I thought that's all I was going to have, but it's been uploaded to YouTube, and anyone looking at this can look down and see that the total number of minutes is 39. So 39 minutes from 20 odd. Quite how that happens, I don't just know. Could it be that the playback rate has changed in the YouTube system? I don't know. I was following that set of cyclists there for some distance, and I had to slow down a bit, because I thought, well, if these folks are all facing the same way as me, they won't see me coming. There won't be any easy way to get past them without being a bit insistent and ringing the bell and so on. I didn't want to do that, so I slowed back a bit. They were going even slower than I was. And this is a section of pavement here, which is obviously pavement and cycle path, and it makes you really so close to oncoming traffic. And with the wind and with these big vehicles going past, it creates a bow wash that pushes the bike to the side. There's once or twice it does take a bit of a dive to the side. The pavement's only about 5 feet wide, so it wasn't really possible to get to the inside edge. It wasn't much further away than the outside edge. So to keep myself safe, I decided that something like a mostly centre line would be better. In fact, this is a narrower section. I think that's down to about 3 feet, and that continues on for a bit. Yeah, I'm going really slowly here. This was very hard. I was beginning to rue the fact that I'd undertaken this rather testing run for my old legs into this kind of windy day. Now, that building on the right is something of note. It has 2 curved bays on it. Originally that only had one, and that was the toll house for when this was a toll road back in, well, I don't know quite how far back that would be. I imagine it would have to be perhaps in Victorian times, but that was the toll booth. And I can remember that extra curved bump being put onto the front of the building so that it became the same at both ends. Just a tiny bit of local history. That house on the right hand side there, that was owned by Raymond, who had the garage in Guardbridge. Raymond was a very well known wildfowler shooter, local personality. He wasn't a big man, but he had a great big huge personality. Raymond did. I always had a laugh and a joke for everyone. And Raymond bought that house, and I don't think he was there not very long. A house that was more to his taste came up, and he bought that one. It's further along here. I don't think we can see that one from the road. And Raymond just he died one day, most unexpectedly. He would be, I don't know, the same age as myself, maybe slightly older, but not much. And that's it. He just suddenly was no longer with us. Greatly missed. Raymond, his son's still running the garage out here, and I think he's become something of a property developer. And that's the 40 limit sign in Guardbridge here, and my legs are beginning to protest. I think if you look at the way those the roadside herbage or the trackside herbage is going past, you'll realise I'm not going very fast. There's a pedestrian in front, and that's not part of the reason, but also his fatigue is the biggest part of the reason. There's a car waiting to come out, and this lady, I did ting the horn just to let her know a bike was coming up from behind, and that's I think about the last of the houses coming up now. And then there's another break, an open section, and there's what used to be the Hungry Horse on the left hand side. I'm not sure if that's still a working business or not, but the lady that had that worked very hard. She worked all the hours that were available. She used to sell things that she'd made. There were eggs, jars of jam, and so on. It was a nice wee place to go in and have a tasty bite, cup of tea, cup of coffee, and a nice homemade sandwich. Always very welcome. Used that place quite often. Now that's the last of the houses in that cluster there. Another wee open bit, and then we'll be into Guardbridge proper. Yeah, the major city of Guardbridge. It used to be, it was the last, the name Guardbridge nowadays is a corruption of what it used to be, what was Garbridge, meaning station bridge, because the last statio or station was the final resting place for pilgrims as they were on their way to St Andrews to, St Andrews was a place with the bones, or some of the bones of St Andrew, kept in the cathedral as holy relics, and people believed that if they visited there with their various ailments, they could be healed. But also it was just pilgrimage in a general sort of way to visit the cathedral. There's other places that, like Compostela, I think, and there's one in Motherwell. There's a grotto there. is associated with healing powers. Anyway, the Guardbridge was the final station, or statio as it was called in those days, on the pilgrimage route to St Andrews, when the cathedral wasn't a ruin, and that's in pre-Reformation days. Now, I'm almost at the end of this particular trip. There's some grass areas on the left-hand side up here, with a couple of picnic tables, and my plan is just to sit there and get my breath back, because I'm quite tired at this point. In fact, I'm very tired. Leg muscles beginning to burn a bit with the effort of pushing into that wind. And I think another day with a wind like that, I would just stay at home. But there we are, just going to dismount across the grass, prop the bike up at the end of the picnic table, get myself sat down and get my breath back. And I'll start this again in just a moment or two when the video recommences. And although I did sit down and take a rest for a wee while, I don't know, 5, maybe even 10 minutes, that's not a very interesting video in this rather interesting video. So I'm going to just cut all that out and start again on the homeward bound trip, which is really very different in character altogether. Onto the track now, just coming down onto the footpath. There we are. And the difference here is a major one. It really is a vast difference to how it was coming out. As I go up through the gears on the bike, you'll see the rate at which things pass show how fast I'm going. I mean, I'm still just on a bicycle, so not going all that fast, but I would guess 2 to 3 times as fast as I was managing into the wind on the way out. There we are, just coming up to the Hungry Horse again. This rather bumpy stretch of pavement with houses on the left hand side. I'm not entirely certain if this ought to be used as a cycle path, but I think in the interest of saving my own skin, I don't really fancy cycling on that road and mixing it with all those cars travelling all along at about, well, it's a 50 limit on the road nowadays. It was 60 just till a short while ago. But that's not all that much of a difference to the cyclist who's just travelling along like myself. I don't know, maybe 15, maybe 20 on the faster bits. Maybe not as much. I don't have any way of measuring speed on the bicycle, so I'm just having to make it up as I go along. Those ones going past, especially the big ones, are still giving a big bow wave of wind as they go past. It's not as bad as when you're facing into the wind, but there we are. And not too far now, there's the double bow-fronted toll booth house that I mentioned at some length on the way out there. Now the hedge just come up to obscure the view. I was going to mention something about the view to the left, but do we get another look at it? Not too sure. Yes, there's a break. There's not too much to be seen. The inner estuary and the outer estuary on the left hand side, it is actually only the outer estuary. On the other side of the fields on my left, where I'm pointing at the moment, or where I'm facing right now, heading well in a southerly direction, back in towards the Old Grey Tune, as it used to be called, and I think just approaching now where we'll be rejoining the cycle path proper. Are those cyclists still there? No, they've gone. There's a single fella coming the other way, and yeah, really going quite fast along here for me on my bicycle, and that felt just so good to have the wind. I could stop pedalling, and instead of slowing down as would have happened on the way out cycling into the wind, there was hardly any slackening of speed at all, because the wind was pushing so hard that it felt just terrific. It was excellent. So I must try to cycle downwind a bit more often. It would be nice if that could be worked in. Again, this rather lengthy stretch is coming up. I'll maybe just limit my comments, could we say, or keep quiet. Some of my listeners, watchers may be inclined to be crying out. There's some smudging of the video there, I see. There's it happening again. I wonder why that, because the original video is not like that. It seems that YouTube, there we are, just a bit faster on the return, 20 plus mph. That is a guess, I stress. I don't know whether I'm doing 20 or not. I might try it another day with the GPS and the phone turned on and have a look and see what kind of speed I'm able to attain. It was noticeable that the wind noise had almost completely gone, because I'm travelling with it rather than increasing the relative speed to the wind by travelling into it. It was so very much more pleasant. Quite a lot of these nasty little stretches of smudged video. Why? There it is again. Why is that? I don't know. It's not the camera. It's not the original video. It seems to be YouTube. Still, it's a free service, so, oh, here's cyclists. I had to slow down a bit for these folks. It was a family group taking up most of the pathway. They didn't expect to see a pensioner on a bicycle thundering down on them. That was quite a bad smudge there. I wonder why that happened. I must find out. Not that I can do much about it. If that's something that YouTube does, that's completely out of my hands. We shall see. Seems to be happening quite often there. I'm having to concentrate along here on keeping my head up, because the horizon is far too close to the top of the frame far too often. It's not good, but there you are. Your inexperienced cameraman is learning to try to keep things right for the video. Not altogether easy. I was aware, very aware all the time, of the fact that I wasn't just on an ordinary cycle run, that I was trying to keep things flowing, because otherwise I might have been inclined to stop here and there, take a bit of a look, maybe take a photograph or two, but none of that on this trip. This is just a concentrating on, well, keeping the speed rate relatively decent. And I think we're only about 2 minutes or so from the end of the video. Now, when I recorded this, it was nothing like 39 minutes. So I'm at a bit of a loss to explain why that suddenly stretched out to 39, because it was high 20s. I think 27 comes to mind. Did I say that earlier in this voiceover? I think perhaps I did. But there we are. Now we're coming into the treed section again, and I don't make it back off the cycle path before the battery begins to die in the camera. I put a wee caption up at the end here to say that that's what was happening, because I didn't know how long the battery might last. Even though the trees are giving shelter along this stretch, it was still very noticeable not cycling into the wind. So they didn't give that much shelter. It was still more than enough to keep my speed higher than it was on the outward bound trip. Now, I cycle all the way back to the house. It's not as if I get off the bike and start to, walk home pushing the bicycle. I did cycle all the way home, but the tape doesn't go that far. Perhaps you'll be glad to hear. That's it. That's the end of it.